Lauren, about the movie coming out because this is what one of the things that I know you for. You're Lauren, the
Mm.
activist, and one of the main things that you've been an activist on behalf of is human trafficking. And I remember, like, you've had so many poignant talks about this that are just alarming. And you've
Mhm.
been sounding this alarm for a while now. So, what was it like for you to see the movie?
So one, thank you for telling me that it was coming out. I usually get stuff sent to me like that all the time, and for whatever reason, this one didn't, and I it didn't come across my radar, quite frankly. But I did go see it the day it came out, and it was like a half full theater, and a couple people walked out. And for me, I think it was an experience for me, and I talk about this professionally and all the time. So it was a big reminder of the feeling that I had the first time that I ever learned about any of this stuff, which was back in 2019. And it was very emotional and it's very overwhelming. So I experienced that again because of the way that the movie starts in the beginning. It's just they hit the ground running in the very beginning of what this looks like, in my opinion. And I think it made people a little, like you could hear people in the audience, they were gasping and, crying. And so I think it goes to show that we still have so much work to do in terms of awareness. People just don't know. And it's not your fault. You don't know what you don't know. But there's still so much work to do. And I think that with this movie, and I think I told you right after I got out of the movie, I texted you and I was like, I understand that they have to make a movie a movie. They have to sell tickets. It has to be, dramatized. It has to, it has to make money. And so I get the storyline behind it, but a couple of things that were heavy hitters for me as having a high expectation of something like this is I wish that it would have been more of a story and the stories that have happened in the US, not in another country. Not saying it's not important in other countries. I'm just saying that it is just as bad here as it is anywhere else. And quite frankly, the reason it's so bad here is because we don't know what to look for. And we have this mentality as Americans that if it's not happening to me, it's not happening. It'll never happen to me until it does. And it will. And
So wait,
so,
wait, wait. I thought there was a part. And this is where I'm not king of specifics here. Like, my wife will ask me something, and I'm like, look, I don't care about the specifics. I just try to like take in the substance of something, and I kind of miss the details. So like even with my daughter, she loves Lord of the Rings, and she like names all the different hobbits, and I'm like, I don't know all the different names of everybody. Like
yeah.
um I thought it said something about Cala, Mexico, California is where the girl was living, the family.
It was both. It was some of it. So this is how it works. I'm trying to think of the easiest way to describe this. So they would bring children from Mexico and cross the border into like right there, which it's still most people consider like you're so close to the border, it's things are different. And that's when the exchange happens or the exploitation happens or the sell happens. And that happens a lot because it's easier to come from another country into our country if you have children with you. And then the flip side of that is when they go back to Mexico or back to wherever they come from. I mean, it's all over in every country, coming from other countries to us. It's not just Mexico. Um, then they need to go back and like in the movie, it starts to get really deep into other parts of the world in terms of, more Mexico, more those places. But it's happening in both. So, I
Okay.
mean, I know they had to, like I said, they had to make a movie, and I understand that. But I think that the awareness is still lacking. I think that we, okay, you have awareness, and then you have what to look for. If you don't know what to look for, you cannot help because it's happening right in front of us. And that's the whole problem. And one of the last time I spoke, it was for Smiles at Sea in Mexico. Um, so one thing that I said at the end of the presentation, because people were asking, how they could get involved and, if I'm doing anything to get more involved. And I told them, I said, well, I've had an idea recently because I fly so much. And, you go through an airport and you see all over the place now the human trafficking posters and in the bathrooms and all of those things. And it dawned on me, okay, great. We are at least putting it in front of people's faces. But here's the problem. They don't know what to look for. Victims do not likely have any way to call that number, text that number, anything. So, yes, it's great that we're doing that, but we need to go much further than that. We have to show people, like, if you see this, these are the signs, the very obvious signs. This is what it looks like. Or, this is what you can do to signal to someone that something is wrong. I reached out to a couple of pilots that I know just to pick their brain. And I was like, how would you guys feel if, someone created a universal symbol or language or something that they could ask the stewardess to basically inform them, hey, like something's going on. I need help or something like that. Because even if, the signs are in the bathrooms of the aircraft, they're going back to the seat where the trafficker is. So it's not, I get it. I see what we're trying to do. But at this point, with it being the fastest growing organized crime in the world, even ahead of drugs, it's a $150 billion industry. We have to do much more, much faster. It's outgrowing us every day.
So I just heard someone put that number in comparison because $150 billion, I can't quantify how big that is. They said it's larger than the NFL, the NBA, MLB, which is, baseball, and hockey, all four of them combined. Like, we are consumers. We consume sports like crazy. The NFL and NBA alone are just massively, like, huge organizations that make a ton of money. And to think
Right.
that this makes more money than them combined, that just puts it into perspective. Like, this is sickening. So did you watch the movie and were you shocked? Like, did you know about the original story with Tim Ballard, the actual, like, because it's based off of it? Okay, so you'd never heard of that story?
I hadn't. So I try to keep myself away from mainstream as much as I can because it can create a lot of noise and a lot of opinion. And with something as serious as this, I do not want to be swayed any way other than let's do the right thing, period. And one thing that I appreciate any awareness, I really do. This is a serious thing. So any type of awareness you can spread to bring traffic to the issue, great. But one thing that I also wish we would stay away from in, terms of large platforms, large access, is incorporating religion. And that is because if you think about it from the victim's point of view, and they're seeking help and they want help, but they are not religious, they're less likely to go to that organization for help because they don't want to be more judged than they already are being judged. So, just flipping that mindset and seeing the other side of that perspective, I think could help a lot in terms of getting even more access and helping even more people. But on top of that, I I think that somebody's got to do something, and I don't know, maybe something on Netflix, or I wish I knew someone that could do this with me or something. But there needs to be a legitimate, straight up educational documentary of every country. It doesn't need to be just one specific country, of what's happening on this planet with the fastest growing organized crime in the world, not in the United States, in the world. And it needs to be simply educational. And the movie behind it is great. It starts to, starts getting that smoke around what's happening, and then you have a fire and people are listening and watching and they're like Googling and all of these things. But the problem is the media and the politics. And then they get wrapped up in, oh, okay, this is probably just, some scheme or some tactic for the US to make more money or to sell more whatever it is. And then once again, we're veering away from the whole point of all of this, which is just awareness. No politics, no biases. I don't know. No, we are talking about human lives. It is modern day slavery. We don't have room for any of that stuff. We just don't.
So Loren, you've known about this since really, I mean, maybe you knew about it before 2009, but maybe you started just being more of an activist in 2019. Sorry, not nine, but
yeah,
19.
yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
so
I learned about it in two. Go ahead.
Was it still an emotional experience even for you to watch the movie, even though you know about it?
Yes. So within probably the first 10 minutes, I was in tears because I actually do think that they did a good job in the beginning of the movie with portraying just how bad it is and how sickening it is, because turning our cheek to it because we don't want to see it doesn't make it stop. It makes it accelerate because we don't know, again, what to look for. And we're like, there's no way in hell that would happen to my kid. There's more exploitation happening here and coming from other countries because they can get away with it here. They know that we're not paying attention.
I think I'm in one of the highest human trafficking states in Arizona because we're so close to the border. I think the
It's one of them.
statistics are like, off the chart. And it's like, Loren, I went to this, again, I know about human trafficking, generally speaking. I haven't studied it. I haven't, gone in depth the same way that you have. And yet here I decide to go to this movie because I want to be able to, share with you. I mean, that's not why I went to see it. I went to see it because of what it talks about.
Of course, you're the one that told me about it. So of course.
But as far as the urgency, so I went by myself, and the next day my coworkers were like, "So why did you go by yourself?" I'm like, "Do you really think I'm going to go with my wife, leave my kids at home while I'm watching a movie about abductions?" Like,
no.
I could just see the moment now. I look at her, she looks at me. Okay, do I go back or do you go? Like, meaning like,
no.
So I'm watching it, and I have 3 daughters. I have 2 sons. And throughout the film, there's that kind of repetition of, what would you do if it was your daughter? What would you do if your daughter's bed was empty? And I can't help but ask myself that question as I'm hearing it. And it's just like I'm shaking as I'm sitting. Now, I'm so thankful that they did not make it graphic. Because it doesn't need to be graphic. We don't need to put child actors and actresses through something like that. But they still did such a good job showing the weightiness and the disturbingness of it's like a horror film that's real.
It's real, right? And until you see it, again, it's your brain isn't going to be triggered to see that as a passerby until you've seen it. That's what psychology shows us. And that's why, so the presentations that I give, that's why I give a very visual, very audible course. If I try to stay as motivational as possible throughout the whole process. And, I don't just throw the issue at them. I give them protocol. This is what you look for in an office. This is how you create safe words in your office if you think something is going on. Like I give them ways that they can actually do something, because the reality is, even in dentistry, 30% of human trafficking victims visit their dentist every year. And we're missing them because we don't know what to look for. And so it is very important, right? You don't know what you don't know. And that's why I'm saying the awareness, like we don't need to do anything else right now until we educate every human on this planet of, this is what you look for, so that it slows down to the point where we can actually make traction. But honestly, just listen to that. When I say it's the fastest growing organized crime in the world, and most people don't know about it, they don't know the severity of it. And so I think anyone with a platform of millions, or anyone that can make a movie in Hollywood or anything like that, there's a huge responsibility there. And I think we can do better. I really do.
So this is where I would love for you to dig into some of the weird things that surround this film. Like Jim Caviezel lost two of his agents because he decided to do this film. I guess it was been like 5 years in the making. There's been obstacles, like almost everything has stopped them trying to get this out. Like to me, it almost sounds so weird that there wouldn't just be some like global unity of, wow, this is something terrible that's happening to children. We all agree this is wrong. Let's get behind this and get this banner out there so people can see it. And yet I don't have the insights as who the powers to be are that were somehow against this, but there's been all this backlash. And to me, it's
Mhm.
weird. We can have movies that don't stand for anything or just stupid movies. And yet they can win awards and get critical acclaim. And then all of a sudden there's something that's out that's bringing awareness to like the modern day atrocity of our time. And somehow it's met with resistance.
Right. Why
Did
do
you
you
ever
think
meet
that is?
resistance? Uh,
Mm-mm. No,
Maybe because
anytime.
of the money. I don't know. Like
mm,
150 billion dollars. There must be
What would
lots of
happen if that
people.
went away? Think about what would happen if that much money disappeared, if that income stopped.
But I
That's
think that
that's the reality,
but
right?
that's what's hard to look at, that there's actually that, because we have to come then face to face with that actual, I call it darkness, I don't know how else to describe it,
Hmm.
that level of despicableness actually exists if consumers are consuming 150 billion dollars worth of children, like
So
oh.
right, right. And so the more you think about it, the more you're like, there's no way this could be happening. And I have to be the one, and I'm so glad to be the one. I know when we did the podcast a little bit ago, I talked about, before I saw this movie, I was telling you, I was like, I'm not doing anything outbound. I'm accepting inbound speaking engagements, but I slowed down anything outbound because I started to realize that it takes a piece out of me every single time. And I've always said I'll keep doing it until I can't do it anymore. And that movie made me want to catapult into outbound, 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 because it showed me, okay, no, we're not going backwards. I'm not going to say that, but we there's so much still that needs to be done. But the thing is, a lot of people will refer to it as sex trafficking, and it's human trafficking because sex trafficking is actually only about a quarter of trafficking. Forced labor is the biggest part of it. So think, I'm bringing someone from another country into our country, and I say, I'll go ahead and put you on payroll. Go ahead and start working and give me your documents, and then I'll give them back to you once I get done with all of the paperwork and everything. Except I never give them back to you. So now you can't prove anything. You could barely prove you're a human being, much less a citizen. So you're stuck, and they have you exactly where they need you. And they probably preyed on their hopes and their dreams and their soft spots, their weaknesses of, I know you have a family back in the country we brought you here from. And if you try to leave, we will go back and we will kill them. So it's no longer just about one person. And the other thing about that is they're manipulative, and they manipulate them into staying. And it's just this whole thing, and there's so much behind it, more than people realize. And it's like you were asking me earlier, it's like, I don't know what kind of reaction or pushback you've ever gotten. Anytime I've ever given a presentation, a webinar, in person, virtual, anything, I've always gotten at least one human being that comes to me and says something along the lines of, I want to light the world on fire. Like, how is this happening? How did I not know about this? How is this not being taught in universities? Like, 30%, and we're missing it every day in dentistry because we don't know what to look for. Like, that's not acceptable. It's just not. So, no, I'm totally with you there. It's I don't understand the pushback. I don't understand the backlash and the let's now push everyone against each other. It's like, no, we don't have time for that. There's children on this planet that are so much more uncomfortable than any of us learning about this. Period. Sit down
So
and learn, but it's hard.
So, Lauren, I was gonna say, it seems only fitting to like honor you right now because this is something you've been advocating for a long time. And
Mm,
whenever a big movie like this happens, where there's a huge awareness for the first time, there's probably going to be some sort of trending activist, which I hope everyone does what they can do. Like, I
mhm,
want them to. But at the same exact time, it's going to be much easier now because there is such a major motion picture that hopefully can cause a movement. But before
right.
there was the major motion picture, before there was the movement, you were still up on stages saying, this is something that is happening. This cannot happen. We need to talk
Oh,
about it. And you were talking about it before it became what it is becoming right now through this movie.
mhm,
This movie is becoming some sort of disruptive media that everyone is having to respond to, whether it's with
mhm,
hate because of I don't understand, or with outrage in terms of how did I not understand this was happening. But I think it's just
mhm,
so neat that you, on your own, decided to wave this banner, and it's awesome now that this now major motion picture again is culturally turning eyeballs to this issue where
right.
you have already been leading.
Yeah,
So
that's
thank
that's
you.
the goal. No, thank you for saying that. It's like when people ask me how my course is titled "What Does Human Trafficking Have to Do with Dentistry?" Because that is within seconds what I get asked when they say, "What do you talk about? You're an international speaker." I'm like, "Human trafficking." And they're like, "I don't understand." I'm like, "I know." That's why, and in the beginning, I would get some like looks like, why, that's so dark. I don't want to make my audience cry. And I'm like, I don't want to make my audience cry either. But that doesn't mean that it's not happening. And that doesn't mean that we don't need to talk about it. It's actually the direct opposite. If we don't start talking about the uncomfortable, we're always going to be uncomfortable. It's always going to be literally thriving and growing and getting worse and worse and worse because they're able to fly under the radar continuously. They're able to keep making more money. They're able to keep networking and keep getting even more human beings in captive like this and get away with it for years, decades. And so, I understand it's an emotional thing. It's hard to talk about, but kind of what I was speaking to earlier, I mean, until I don't, until I physically can't do it anymore or mentally can't do it anymore, both are super important. That movie made me realize that I need to keep doing it because we still have so much work to do. So many people don't know about it, and like I said, it's not anyone's fault. No one teaches us this. If anything, if you really want to think about it, they do the opposite. They create this facade of we live in this safe space, and it's not the truth. We live in a very, very, very dark world. And the only difference is we don't realize how dark that world is until we're standing in that dark room. And then it's too late. So we need to get ahead of it as best as we can. But politics and backlash and pushing everybody against each other, that's not going to happen. It's just going to make it so much worse. And we can't do it. We can't let that happen.
No, and that's the crazy thing. This is not a religious issue.
Mm,
Meaning, if it's an organization that has a religious affiliation and they want to do something and use their funds to help out,
hmm.
awesome. If it's an organization that has no religious affiliation and wants to use their funds to help out, awesome.
Great.
This isn't a left versus right political issue. This is about humans.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
fact that there's more people in slavery now than at any time ever in the history of the world, even when slavery was legal, like it's hard to grapple with that, Loren. I don't want to
Yep.
accept that because it's hard to think that this evolved. We're so evolved, right? Like we should know better, right? And yet
Right.
here, I always think back, what would I have done if I was in pre-World War II Germany? You know, and maybe I'm this age and I have other friends and we start seeing the writing on the wall that that oppression is starting to begin or take hold because of bad ideology. I would like to think that I would do something about it, but I don't know what I would have, I don't know what I would do. And yet right now there's like a modern day Holocaust happening with children
Hmm.
worldwide, and it's like I don't know what to do, but I know when I attended your session and you're actually giving really practical, here's a hotline, here's cues you can be looking for, this is what you can do. It's like that empowered me to be like, wow, there is something I can do about it,
Yes.
you know?
Yes. There's one video that I post towards the end because, like I said, I try and stay as motivational throughout as I can. But it is what it is at the end of the day. I have to show it if I want people to really understand and also feel that urgency. I don't want you to just come in, now you know about it, okay, great. No, I kind of want to grab you a little bit, like they did in the beginning of the movie, like I was saying, like I want your attention because you haven't seen this thus far. I know you haven't. And there's a video towards the end, and they say like, don't let the fact that you're hearing more about this now scare you, because that's actually a good thing. That means that we're making traction because it's been happening throughout history. It's just that we weren't making traction. We didn't have social media. We didn't have international news. We didn't have telephone, like we didn't have all of these things. Now we do. You can call someone on the other side of the planet within seconds and tell them what you just saw. So let that be as comforting as it can that you're hearing this all over the place, because that means that the more people hear about it, the less likely someone can get away with it, because it's going to happen no matter what. If you want to put your head in the sand, I understand. It's really dark. I'm not going to be in the sand with you. I'm going to try and pull you out of the sand, but I understand. It's really, really difficult. It can be really triggering for people. Uh, Anyone that goes and has a course like this or attends a course like this or anything like that, I totally get it. But it's going to keep going if we don't do something to a mass scale. It has to be a mass scale because this is the fastest growing organized crime in the world. In order for us to even put a dent in that, we have to come together. We can't be pushing each other apart. Pushing each other apart is going to make it worse. It's honestly what traffickers want us to do. It's exactly what they want us to do.
So, Loren, if our listeners right now are like, man, I want to learn more information about this, or maybe I'd like to hire Loren to speak at an event to share more
Mm-hmm.
about this, where do you want them going?
There's two ways that I have been creating access for. You can either contact me on Instagram, it's Loren the Activist, Loren, or you can email me, LorenTheActivist at outlook.com, and that's Loren again. Any of those or either of those, you'll get me within, if not a couple of hours, within that day or the next day. So don't hesitate. Please reach out, even if it's just to ask me questions. This is the one job I would do for free and would lose sleep over. So I'm happy to help in any way possible. And I've been brainstorming with some other people that do have access of, okay, what do we do? Like, who do we contact? Who knows someone at Netflix with reach, or who knows someone at Hulu, or who knows whoever, Amazon Prime, whoever is really going to take, a jump at this and put their head on the chopping block is what I would be asking anyone to do. Like, this needs to be purely educational on a mass scale, and we have to show what it looks like, what they can do, or it's never going to stop. It's just not.
Wow. just sobering, the whole conversation. But again, Loren, thank you for joining me. Thank you for being willing to even have this discussion. And yeah, we'll see if there's, any sort of future discussions around this. But again, just thank you for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.